A frosty December evening settled over New York City, cloaking the metropolis in a blanket of snow. In his massive mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, Arthur Jameson stood by the panoramic window of his study, watching the falling flakes. He was a successful businessman, the owner of a major construction firm. He was used to getting everything he wanted, everything except for one thing, the happiness of his only son. Ethan was 23 years old, but he had been confined to a wheelchair since a terrible car accident 5 years earlier. The best doctors in the world simply shrugged. The spinal cord injury was too severe. Since then, Ethan had withdrawn into himself, refusing to speak with friends, study, or live. He spent his days sitting in his room, staring at his computer monitor or out the window. Mr. Jameson, Ms. Evelyn Hayes, the housekeeper, who had worked for the Jamesons for 15 years, quietly entered the room. Ethan refused dinner again. He says he isn't hungry. Jameson let out a heavy sigh. His heart was torn by the pain he felt for his son. He had tried everything: the best psychologists, expensive gifts, attempts to organize gatherings with friends. Nothing helped. Ethan seemed to have died inside, leaving only a physical shell behind. "Thank you. Ms. Hayes, you may go." After the housekeeper left the room, Arthur Jameson took a glass of cognac from the table and drank a large gulp. A crazy idea that had occurred to him that morning ran through his mind. The idea was so wild that even he didn't believe he would dare to act on it. But desperation was driving him to extreme measures. He remembered how his driver, Samuel, had told him a month ago about a homeless young black woman at Grand Central Terminal. Samuel sometimes bought her food because he felt pity for the young woman. According to him, she was between 20 and 22 years old. She was educated and well-read, but some circumstances had forced her onto the street. What if, Arthur Jameson thought, what if I brought her into the house? Maybe the company of a contemporary who has endured her own trials could help Ethan. Maybe he would see that there are people in a worse situation who still haven't given up. The idea was risky, bringing a total stranger in off the street. But Jameson was ready to do anything for his son. He pressed the intercom button. "Samuel, get the car ready. We're driving to Grand Central." Grand Central Terminal greeted them with bustle, noise, and the smell of cheap food from the station cafes. Arthur Jameson, in his expensive cashmere coat and highly polished shoes, looked like an alien here. Samuel walked ahead, searching for the familiar figure. "Over there, Mr. Jameson." The driver pointed to a corner near the subway entrance. A young woman sat on a piece of cardboard, leaning against the cold wall. Despite her ragged clothes and dirt, noble features could be discerned in her appearance. Her dark hair was neatly braided into a single thick plait, and in her brown eyes, focused on an open book, a lively spirit shone. Arthur Jameson stepped closer and saw that she was reading Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. This detail touched him for some reason. "Good evening," he began, unsure how to properly address her. The young woman lifted her head, and Jameson involuntarily noticed her beauty: fine features, high cheekbones, a straight nose. Even life on the street had failed to extinguish her natural grace. "Good evening," she replied calmly, without fear or subservience, looking at the obviously wealthy man. "My name is Arthur Jameson. Samuel told me about you." "What is your name?" "Arya," the young woman replied briefly. "Arya, I want to offer you a position. I have a son who needs companionship. Someone who could simply be there, talk, read books to him. I'm prepared to give you lodging, food, and fair pay." Arya scrutinized his face intently, as if trying to understand the motive behind this offer. "Why me?" she asked directly. "Surely you have the means to hire a professional." Arthur Jameson was silent for a moment, searching for the right words. My son, he's disabled. After the accident, he shut himself off and refuses all communication. All the professionals I have hired couldn't find a way in. I thought, perhaps he needs someone who has gone through hardship herself, someone honest, who isn't playing a role for money. Arya set the book aside. And you thought a homeless woman from the train station would be the right choice? There was no insult in her voice, only slight irony. I thought that a young black woman who reads Dostoevsky in these conditions instead of sinking into despair possesses an inner strength that could help my son. Long silence followed. Finally, Arya stood up and dusted off her old coat. All right, but I have conditions. First, I won't tolerate disrespect from anyone in your home. Second, if your son rejects my company, I will leave without making any demands. Third, I want the opportunity to continue my education. I only need 1 more year to finish my degree in English literature at Columbia University. Arthur Jameson raised his eyebrows in surprise. A Columbia student? At the train station? Agreed. All your conditions will be met. Let's go. Arya nodded, picked up her tattered bag and the book. As they walked to the car, Jameson noticed her turn back for a second and cast a farewell glance at her cardboard corner. The Jameson mansion impressed Arya with its sheer size, but she tried not to show it. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, paintings in gilded frames. All of it belonged to another world, a world she had once known but lost. Ms. Evelyn Hayes greeted the new guest with suspicion, but following the master's instructions, she led Arya to the guest room on the 2nd floor. The bathroom is here, the housekeeper pointed out. I'll bring you some clean clothes. Dinner is in an hour. Left alone, Arya sat on the edge of the bed. It was the first time in 3 years she had been in a normal room with clean sheets and hot running water. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she held them back. She couldn't afford to relax. This was only temporary. Everything good in her life had always been temporary. She took a long, hot shower, washing off the grime of the streets, the chill of the station nights, and the bitterness of loneliness. Ms. Hayes brought simple but high-quality clothes, jeans, a sweater, slippers, everything fit. At dinner, Arya saw Ethan for the first time. He was wheeled into the dining room. A handsome young man, with his father's dark hair and regular features, but his eyes. There was such emptiness in his gray eyes that Arya involuntarily flinched. She had seen those eyes in people at the station, those who had completely lost the will to live. Ethan, this is Arya, Arthur Jameson introduced. She'll be staying with us to keep you company. Ethan looked her over with an indifferent gaze. Another nanny? He said with a weary undertone. Dad, how much longer? I asked you to leave me alone. I'm not a nanny, Arya said calmly, serving herself salad. And I have no intention of pushing myself on you. I'm just staying in the next room. If you want to talk, we'll talk. If not, I won't bother you. Ethan looked at her, surprised. Usually, everyone his father hired immediately started fussing over him, trying to get him to talk or cheer him up. So where did Dad dig you up? He asked, with a slight challenge in his voice. Grand Central Terminal, Arya answered honestly, meeting his gaze steadily. Silence fell over the table. Ms. Hayes nearly dropped the serving dish. Arthur Jameson tensed up, waiting for his son's reaction. But suddenly, Ethan smiled. The first time in a long time. From the station? Seriously? Dad, are you that desperate? I lived out on the street for 3 years, Arya continued, cutting her chicken breast. Before that, I was a 4th-year English Lit student at Columbia. My parents died in an accident. My apartment was taken away from me in court by distant relatives. My friends disappeared fast. So, yes, I'm from the station. Is that a problem? Ethan looked at her with newfound interest. And what is it like, living on the street? Cold, Arya answered briefly, and lonely. But I survived. And you, apparently, decided to give up, even though you have a roof over your head and a loving father. You don't get it, Ethan said sharply. I'm crippled. I'll never walk again. And I'll never get my parents back, Arya countered. So what am I supposed to do? Go back to the station and die? They looked at each other. Two young people, each with their own pain, their own loss. I'm tired, Ethan finally said. Take me to my room. But Arthur Jameson noted that his son had eaten almost all of his dinner for the first time in a long time. Arya couldn't fall asleep. The clean bed seemed too soft after the cardboard and station benches. She got up, put on her robe, and quietly went into the hallway. The house was asleep. She walked downstairs to the living room, where she saw a large library, books. How much she had missed books. On the street, she could only read what she found in dumpsters or what kind people gave her. Here, there were hundreds of volumes, classics, modern literature, poetry. She turned on a floor lamp, pulled a volume of Lucille Clifton from the shelf, settled into an armchair, and immersed herself in reading. Can't sleep? Arya jumped. Ethan was sitting in the doorway in his wheelchair. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you, she said. You didn't. I rarely sleep through the night. He rolled closer. What are you reading? Clifton. The poem, Won't You Celebrate With Me? Do you know it? Born a black woman, and now, simple as that, I am strong, Ethan continued. We studied her in high school. They read the poem together, taking turns speaking the lines. When they finished, silence filled the room. But it was not awkward. It was warm, understanding. Were you really at Columbia? Ethan asked. Absolutely. 4th year, English Lit, specializing in 19th century Russian literature. I was working on my thesis on Dostoevsky. And how did you end up on the street? Arya was silent for a moment, considering whether she should tell him. But something about this late-night conversation in the half-darkness of the library invited openness. My parents died coming back from a trip. A drunk driver crossed the center line. I was supposed to go with them, but I stayed in the city because of an exam. Her voice broke. The apartment was in my dad's name, but there was no will. His brother, whom we hadn't seen in 10 years, showed up. He established his legal claim in court. I didn't have money for a lawyer. The dean promised to help with a dorm spot, but there were no openings. Temporary options ran out, and so did the money. And that's how I ended up at the station. And your friends? Your boyfriend? Arya smiled sadly. You know, it's amazing how fast people disappear when you run into trouble. My boyfriend said his parents were against our relationship, that I wasn't his equal anymore. My girlfriends initially pitied me, but then started avoiding me. It's inconvenient when your best friend is homeless, right? And then I stopped reaching out myself. Pride, probably. Ethan was silent, looking at her. In the light of the floor lamp, her face looked particularly fragile. What about you? Arya asked. How did the accident happen? Stupidity, Ethan grumbled. I bet my friends I was the fastest on the state highway. I was speeding like an idiot. Lost control on the curve. My friends got off with bruises, and He gestured to his paralyzed legs. The doctors say I was lucky to even survive. But is it really luck? Yes, Arya said firmly. You're alive. You have a father who loves you. You have a home. opportunities. You can study, work, create. Yeah, you can't walk. But does that cancel out everything else? That's easy for you to say. Arya laughed, but without joy. I used the restrooms at the station for 3 years. I ate what I could find, slept where I could. In the winter, I thought I would freeze to death. But every morning I got up and kept going. Because as long as you're alive, there's hope. They were silent for a long time. Then Ethan said, "Will you show me what you wrote about Dostoevsky?" I was interested in his work too. Before the accident, of course, my notes stayed at the university. I'd have to reconstruct it from memory. You have a computer and all of Dostoevsky's works. We could work on it together. He cut himself off, as if startled by his own impulse. That would be great, Arya said softly. I've missed intellectual conversation. People at the station aren't exactly debating the symbolism in the brothers Karamazov. Ethan smiled, and Arya thought he had a beautiful smile. It was a shame he showed it so rarely. All right, I'm rolling off to bed, he said. And you should rest too. Tomorrow I'll show you my library. I have books upstairs that aren't down here. When he was gone, Arya sat in the armchair for a long time, clutching the volume of poetry to her chest. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something akin to hope. Weeks turned into months. Life in the Jameson household settled into a new rhythm. Arya and Ethan spent most of the day together. They read, discussed what they read, argued about literature, philosophy, and art. Arya helped Ethan with his long-neglected project. He had once dreamed of writing a book on the modern interpretation of German and Russian classics. Arthur Jameson could hardly contain his joy over the changes in his son. Ethan began to leave his room, took an interest in his father's business, and even asked for papers related to one of the company's projects. It turned out he had studied architecture before the accident and now wanted to apply his knowledge. Arya, meanwhile, had re-enrolled at the university. Arthur Jameson paid her tuition and helped resolve all the formalities. She drove to her classes and, in the evenings, would tell Ethan about the lectures and bring back notes that they would go over together. But most importantly, something deeper than friendship developed between the young people. It was a profound understanding, a kinship of souls who had experienced loss and learned to cherish life. One evening, as they sat in Ethan's library, he suddenly said, "You know, I thought about dying before you came here. I even researched methods for people like me." Arya looked up from her book. "And what stopped you?" "I couldn't inflict that pain on my father, but I was living like a plant. And now," he paused, "now I wake up thinking about what we're going to read today, what we'll argue about. I think about your smile when you find an interesting quote, about how you frown when you disagree with me." Arya put down her book and sat on the armrest of his chair. She cautiously took his hand in hers. "Ethan, you know that I know," he interrupted her. "I know it's crazy, that I'm disabled, that I can't offer you a normal life, but I can't be silent any longer. I love you, Arya. I love your strength, your intellect, your beauty. I love how you laugh at my jokes, how you argue with me, how you read poetry. I know I have no right." Arya placed a hand over his mouth. "Yes," she whispered. "You have the right to love and be loved. Do you think it matters to me that you're in a wheelchair? I fell in love with your soul, your mind, your heart. I fell in love with the man who supported me when I was nobody, who gave me back my belief in myself." She leaned in and kissed him tenderly, carefully, as if afraid to chase the moment away. Ethan embraced her and pulled her closer. Everything was in that kiss. The pain of the past, the joy of the present, the hope for the future. "But people will talk," Ethan began when they separated. "Let them talk," Arya said firmly. I lived at the station for 3 years. Do you think I care what people think? Only you matter to me. A few more months flew by. Arya graduated with honors. Ethan became actively involved in his father's company, consulting on architectural projects. Their relationship blossomed, despite all of the difficulties. Arthur Jameson was happy to see his son alive, in love, and active. He had grown to love Arya like a daughter, and was thinking about the young couple's wedding. Ms. Hayes, initially suspicious, now treated the young woman with motherly care. However, Arya sometimes became thoughtful and sad. To Ethan's questions, she replied that she was just tired or thinking about her parents. He didn't press, understanding that everyone had the right to private feelings. One night, Arya woke up from a nightmare. She was dreaming again about her parents, the accident, their last moments. She quietly slipped out of bed. They had been sharing a bedroom for several months now, and went into the living room. In the darkness, she didn't notice Arthur Jameson sitting in an armchair with a glass of whiskey. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. Arya jumped. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you. Sit down." Arthur Jameson gestured to the armchair next to him. "Would you like a drink?" "No, thank you." They sat in silence. Finally, Jameson began. "You know, I lost my wife, too. Ethan's mother, cancer. She was only 35, Ethan was 10. I thought I would go mad with grief, but I had to keep living for my son." "I'm sorry," Arya said quietly. "And then this accident. I almost lost him, too. You know what the worst part is? I blamed myself. I was the one who bought him that car for his 18th birthday. I let him speed." "That's not your fault," Arya said firmly. "Ethan made his own choice. A dumb choice, but his choice. You couldn't have foreseen that, just like you couldn't have foreseen what would happen to your parents." Arya flinched. "Ethan told me," Arthur Jameson explained, "that you were actually supposed to be driving with them. Do you blame yourself for staying behind?" Tears ran down Arya's cheeks. "Every day. Every darn day, I think. Why not me? Why did I stay to study for some stupid exam? Why wasn't I in the car? Because it was meant to be," Arthur Jameson said gently. "Because you were supposed to survive to meet my son. To save him, to save me. You gave me Ethan back. Arya, you gave me a purpose in life." He stood up, walked over to her, and hugged her paternally. Arya broke down crying, burying her face in his shoulder. The years of held-back sorrow, fear, and loneliness burst forth. It's all right, Arthur Jameson comforted her. "You're home, you're safe, you are loved. We are your family now." When Arya had calmed down, he pulled away and looked at her intently. "Is there something else bothering you? I see the pain in your eyes when you look at Ethan sometimes." Arya shook her head, but Arthur Jameson was an experienced man. "Is it about children?" he realized. "You think Ethan. He deserves a complete family," Arya whispered. "He deserves a wife who can give him children. And you love him, and he loves you. The rest is solvable. There's adoption, there's surrogacy. There are many ways. The main thing is love. You two have that." Arya gratefully squeezed his hand. "Thank you for everything. For believing in me, for giving me a chance." "You gave us a chance," Arthur Jameson smiled. "And now, go to Ethan. He's probably awake and worried." The next morning began as usual. Arya woke up early, kissed the sleeping Ethan, and went to the kitchen to make his favorite breakfast. Miss Hayes hadn't arrived yet. She started later on weekends. While preparing the omelet, Arya thought about the late-night conversation with Arthur Jameson. His words warmed her heart. For the first time in a long time, she felt like part of a real family. Suddenly, she heard a sound from upstairs, then a crash, as if something had fallen. "Ethan!" she cried, dropping the pan and running up the stairs. The door to their bedroom was open. Arya flew inside and froze. Ethan was standing. He was standing on his own feet next to the bed, holding onto the headboard. His wheelchair lay on its side. Apparently, it had fallen over. "Ethan," Arya whispered, not believing her eyes. He turned his face, streaked with tears, toward her. I felt my legs," he gasped. "I woke up and felt a tingling. Then I tried to move my toes, and I did. Arya, I did it." At that moment, Arthur Jameson, awakened by the noise, rushed into the room. When he saw his son standing, he went pale. "My God, Ethan." "Dad, I can stand." Ethan tried to take a step, but his legs buckled. Arya rushed to him, caught him, and helped him sit on the bed. "Don't rush," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Your muscles are atrophied. You need rehab. But the most important thing is the feeling is back." Arthur Jameson was already dialing the number of their family doctor, Dr. Chen, demanding his immediate arrival. Arya hugged Ethan, who still couldn't grasp what had happened. "It's because of you," he whispered. "You are my miracle. You gave me back the will to live, and my body responded." Dr. Chen arrived after half an hour. After a thorough examination, he shook his head. "Unbelievable. I've seen the scans, read the reports. The injury was serious, but sometimes the body is capable of amazing regeneration, especially in young people. The psychological factor also plays a huge role. The will to live, a positive mindset, love, all of that can work wonders." He ordered a series of tests and recommended the best rehabilitation center in the United States. With the right rehab, Ethan will walk again. Not immediately. It will take months of hard work. But the prognosis is very optimistic. After the doctor left, the house was filled with joyful commotion. Arthur Jameson was on the phone with clinics, organizing the trip to New York Presbyterian Hospital. Ms. Hayes, who had rushed to work after her boss called, was weeping with joy. Arya didn't leave Ethan's side, holding his hand. "Are you coming with me?" Ethan asked. "To the ends of the earth," Arya answered. Chapter: The Return. 6 months at the New York hospital flew by. Ethan worked hard with rehabilitation specialists, physical therapists, and masseurs. Arya was by his side every day, supporting him, encouraging him, and sometimes forcing him to keep going when pain and fatigue made him want to quit. Progress was slow but steady. First, Ethan learned to stand with support, then to take his first steps on the parallel bars. After 3 months, he was walking with a walker, and by the end of rehab, he was using a cane. Arthur Jameson flew in every 2 weeks. He couldn't leave the business for long, but wanted to be near his son. He watched as the young couple's relationship blossomed, how they supported each other. During one of his visits, he pulled Ethan aside. "Son, I want to give you something." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "This is your mother's ring. I've saved it for the woman you would love. I think the time has come." Ethan opened the box. Inside, a delicate ring with a diamond, framed by small sapphires, sparkled. "Dad," Ethan's voice trembled. "She is worthy of this ring," Arthur Jameson said firmly. "Just as you are worthy of happiness. Don't let it slip away." Ethan proposed to her on the last day at the hospital. They were strolling in the park. He could already walk short distances without a cane. They stopped by a pond where ducks were swimming. "Arya," Ethan began, "in this past year, you've given me back my life. You literally got me back on my feet. I don't know how to thank you for everything." "I don't need thanks," Arya smiled. "I need you." Thereupon, Ethan knelt, which was difficult for him, but he did it persistently. "Arya Dixon, will you marry me?" The box opened, revealing his mother's ring. Arya covered her face with her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. 1,000 times, yes." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, stood up with her help, and kissed his fiancée. In that moment, it seemed to them that they could overcome any difficulty because they had already conquered so much. The wedding took place 3 months after their return. Ethan was walking confidently by this time, only limping slightly. He returned to his father's firm, now as a full partner, overseeing the architectural division. Arya opened a small publishing house, specializing in classic literature with modern commentaries. Her first project was an edition of Dostoevsky with her own research. The wedding was intimate, with only close friends and relatives. Arya walked down the aisle on the arm of Arthur Jameson, who took the role of the father of the bride. In her white dress and veil, she looked like a fairy tale princess. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off her. "Who would have thought?" The best man, an old friend, whispered to him, "that the young woman from the train station would become your wife." "She was never just the young woman from the station," Ethan replied firmly. "She was always a princess who had temporarily lost her crown." After exchanging vows and rings, the newlyweds danced their first dance. Ethan led her confidently, leaning on Arya only occasionally. The guests wept, seeing this couple who had overcome so many trials. They spent their honeymoon in Italy, strolling through Florence, riding a gondola in Venice, and admiring the sunsets in Tuscany. Ethan could already walk long distances, though he got tired in the evenings. One evening, as they sat on a hotel terrace overlooking the Florence Duomo, Arya said, "You know, I was thinking, maybe we should go to Grand Central and thank the people who helped me during those tough times." Ethan looked at her, surprised. "You want to go back there?" "Not to return, just to close that chapter and help those who are there now, like I once was. We could start a foundation to support the homeless, especially those who ended up on the street due to tragic circumstances." "That's a wonderful idea," Ethan agreed. "Dad will definitely support it. And we could name the foundation after your parents." Arya burst into tears and hugged her husband. The circle was complete. From being homeless, she became someone who could help others. 2 years passed. The Marcus and Lisa Bell Foundation, named after Arya's parents, was successful. 3 shelters were opened, where people could not only stay the night, but also receive assistance with replacing documents, finding jobs, and getting medical care. Ethan recovered completely. He jogged in the mornings, played tennis with his father, and drove a car, albeit very carefully. His architecture firm was thriving. Arya had defended her doctoral dissertation and was teaching at Columbia while running her publishing house. Her book on Dostoevsky won a prestigious literary award. But something was missing for complete happiness: children. The doctors confirmed their fears. Due to the consequences of his injury, Ethan could not conceive children. They discussed options and consulted specialists. One day, Arya came home with a strange look on her face. Ethan was working on a new project in his study. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" Arya sat down across from him, holding an envelope. "Ethan, remember we did tests for the IVF program?" "Of course. Is something wrong?" "No, yes. Arya took a deep breath. The doctors found a way. An experimental procedure, but with high chances of success. We can try it. Ethan jumped up, rounded the desk, and hugged his wife. That's wonderful news. When do we start? There's one more thing. Arya pulled back and looked into his eyes. I'm pregnant. What? But how? The doctor said the chances were minimal, but not zero. She placed his hand on her belly. The miracle happened. Once again. Ethan knelt and pressed his forehead against her stomach. Hello, little one. I'm your dad. The dad who can walk. Thanks to your incredible mom. 9 months passed in joyful haste. Arthur Jameson was beside himself with happiness. He was going to be a grandfather. The nursery was decorated in bright colors, as they didn't yet know if it would be a boy or a girl. The birth was difficult, but Arya managed it. When Ethan was handed the bundle, he barely dared to breathe. Congratulations, you have a daughter. The midwife smiled. Little Lisa, named after Arya's mother, opened her eyes, as gray as her father's, and tightly grasped his finger. Hello, princess, Ethan whispered. Welcome to our fairy tale. Epilogue. 5 years later. The morning in the Jameson house began loudly. 5-year-old Lisa rampaged through the house, and 3-year-old Marcus, an unexpected second miracle, tried to follow her. Mom, Dad, Grandpa, look what I can do. Lisa did a headstand against the wall. Careful with the headstands, sunshine, Ethan warned, ready to catch his daughter at any moment. Arya looked out from the kitchen. Breakfast is ready. Everyone washed their hands. The whole family gathered at the large dining table. Arthur Jameson, who now dedicated more time to his grandchildren than to business. Ms. Hayes, who had officially become part of the family. Ethan and Arya, the children. Mommy, tell us the story of the princess again, Lisa asked, eating her oatmeal. Which princess? The one who lived at the train station and then met the prince. Arya and Ethan exchanged glances. They told their children their story as a fairy tale, omitting the harsh details. Once upon a time, there was a princess who lost her home, Arya began. She was very sad and lonely, but one day, a good king invited her to his castle, so she could befriend the prince, who couldn't walk. And the princess was magical, Lisa added. She loved the prince so much that he stood up and walked. Not exactly, Ethan smiled. The prince stood up because the princess gave him back the will to live. And love. That's the strongest magic. And then, they had Princess Lisa and Prince Marcus, the boy concluded, swinging his spoon. And they lived happily ever after, Arthur Jameson added, looking at his large family with unreserved love. After breakfast, Arya and Ethan went out onto the terrace. The autumn sun gilded the garden. The children played on the lawn under the supervision of Grandpa and Ms. Hayes. Do you remember that first evening? Ethan asked, embracing his wife. When my father picked you up from the station? Like it was yesterday. I was sure it was only temporary, that I wouldn't stay long. And now I'm here forever. Do you know what I thought when I first saw you? Arya turned to her husband. That I had the saddest eyes in the world? I thought, if I can bring the light back to those eyes, then my life hasn't been in vain. You brought back more than light. You gave me back my life. You literally got me back on my feet. We saved each other, Arya corrected. You gave me a home, a family, love, and you gave me everything, Ethan finished. They stood embraced, looking at their children, their father, their large, bright house. Two people whose destinies were brought together in the most unexpected way. The homeless woman from the station and the wealthy disabled man. What could they have had in common? But sometimes the true miracle lies in the most unexpected encounters. Second chapter, The Power of the Word. 8 years later. Lisa was 8. Marcus was 6. Family life in the Jameson household continued, but Arya and Ethan faced a new challenge. One autumn day, Arya was conducting a literature class at the Foundation's shelter when a staff member, Marina, approached her. "Ms. Jameson, we have a new resident, a very young woman, 18 years old. A tough story. Maybe you could speak with her? She was also studying English Lit before everything happened." Arya found the young woman in the farthest corner of the cafeteria. Thin, with large, frightened eyes, she was hunched over, as if trying to become invisible. "Hello?" Arya said gently, sitting across from her. "My name is Arya. I was told you were studying English literature?" The young woman looked up at her, and Arya involuntarily flinched. So much pain was in that look. "Yes," she answered barely audibly. "First year at Columbia. My name is Keisha." "I studied English Lit at Columbia too," Arya smiled. "What happened, Keisha? If you want to talk about it, of course." Keisha was silent for a moment, then began haltingly. "My stepfather. When my mother died, he started... Anyway, I ran away. I thought they would help me at the college dorm, but there were no spots. I stayed with a friend, then with acquaintances. And then the money ran out. And no one wanted to take me in anymore. My papers were stolen at the station. Without them, I couldn't re-enroll in school or find a job." The story was painfully familiar. Arya saw herself 8 years ago, just as lost, frightened, without faith in the future. "Keisha, listen to me carefully," Arya said firmly. "Everything will be all right. We'll help you get your documents back. We'll help you return to Woolaj. We'll find you a place to stay. You are not alone. Do you hear me?" Keisha burst into tears. Arya hugged her. At that moment, Lisa ran into the cafeteria. "Mommy? Mommy! Dad fell." Ethan was in the hospital. The diagnosis sounded like a judgment. Acute flare-up of the old injury, pinched nerves, danger of paralysis. The doctor spoke cautiously, but Arya read between the lines. The situation was critical. "This is my fault." Arthur Jameson tormented himself. "I let him do too much. Marathons. Sports. His body couldn't handle the strain." "No one is at fault," Arya replied, exhausted. "Ethan chose this himself. He wanted to live a full life. Could we have forbidden him?" The children didn't understand why Dad hadn't come home. Arya tried to explain without scaring them, but Lisa, smart for her age, understood everything. "Is Daddy not going to be able to walk again?" she asked one evening. "I don't know, honey, but even if he can't, we don't love Daddy for walking, do we?" "Of course not. We love Daddy because he's Daddy." In the hospital, Ethan fell into a deep depression. The prospect of returning to a wheelchair crushed him. "I can't go through this again," he told Arya. "I can't be a burden again." "You were never a burden, and never will be," Arya insisted. "We'll get through this, just like last time." But in her husband's eyes, she saw the same fear, the same despair as 8 years ago, and that frightened her the most. One evening, as Arya sat by the sleeping Ethan's bedside, Keisha, the young woman from the shelter, quietly entered the room. In her hands, she held a small bouquet of wildflowers. "I apologize for coming without an invitation," she said shyly. "Marina told me what happened. I wanted to thank you and your husband. You saved my life." "Keisha, that's not necessary. Please let me speak." "I was ready to give up, but you showed me there's a way out, that there are people willing to help. And I thought..." She placed the flowers on the nightstand. "When I started studying English Lit, my professor said literature heals souls. Maybe it's silly, but could I come and read to your husband? When he's awake, the classics we both love." Arya looked at the young woman, so young, yet already marked by so much pain. and felt something warm rise in her chest. The circle was closing. Once, she, the homeless young woman, had come into the Jamesons' home to read to the ailing Ethan. Now, another young woman, saved by her foundation, was offering the same thing. Of course, Keisha. I think that will help Ethan. Keisha came every day and read from Ralph Ellison, Langston Hughes, and Toni Morrison. Her voice, young and clear, filled the room with poetry. Ethan was silent at first, but gradually began to join the literary discussions. You know, Keisha said once, I always thought Dostoevsky was dark. But when I was on the street, I realized he wrote about hope, about how even in the darkest situation, there's a way out. Aria feels the same way, Ethan responded. She wrote her dissertation on it. I read it. Your wife is still legendary at the university, the student who disappeared and then came back to defend a brilliant paper. Gradually, others joined the readings. Residents of the shelter whom the foundation had helped began to visit. Everyone brought their favorite book and shared their story of how literature had helped them not to give up. Ethan's room turned into an impromptu literary salon. The nurses shook their heads, but the chief physician, an old friend of Arthur Jameson's, allowed it. The patient's psychological state was more important than hospital rules. And then something unexpected happened. During a particularly emotional reading of a Maya Angelou poem, in which Keisha was reading about rising, Ethan suddenly moved his leg. Stop, he cried. I feel it, Aria. I feel my legs. More tests, more consultations, cautious optimism from the doctors. It turned out the pinching hadn't been critical. The psychological factor had once again played the decisive role. Surrounded by love and support, Ethan had found the strength to fight. Rehabilitation went faster this time. After 3 months, Ethan returned home. Yes, he needed a cane again. Strenuous activities were forbidden, but he could walk, hug his children, and dance with his wife. The family council decided that Keisha should live in the Jameson home until she finished her degree. The young woman became a big sister to Lisa and Marcus, an assistant to Aria, and a conversation partner for Ethan. History repeats itself, Arthur Jameson smiled. Only now, we know something good will come of it. Keisha blossomed, re-enrolled at the university, and began her seminar work under Aria's guidance. And most importantly, the light of hope shone in her eyes once more. The Bell Foundation expanded. Now, every facility had a library and a literature club. They called this program Healing Through the Word. It was astonishing how many people found solace and strength in books. One evening, as the whole family gathered for dinner, Lisa said, Mom, I know what I want to be, a writer. I'm going to write books that help people. Me too, Marcus rushed to add. Only I'll write fairy tales. Aria and Ethan exchanged glances. There was pride and tenderness in their eyes. And I, Keisha said quietly, want to work for your foundation, to help people like me, to show them there's a way out. Arthur Jameson raised his glass. To our big family, to the fact that we all found each other, to the miracles that happen when people don't pass by the misfortune of others. Third chapter. A New Legacy. Life went on. Keisha graduated, the children grew up, the foundation flourished. But fate had a new twist in store. While looking through archives for a book on the history of the foundation, Aria stumbled upon a strange coincidence. On the list of the first major donors was a woman named Vivian Sinclair. The amount was considerable, and the date was just 1 month after the foundation's opening. Ethan, look, Aria called to her husband. Vivian Sinclair, same initials as my mom's maiden name, only the last name is different. Ethan looked at the documents. Maybe a coincidence, although let's check the address. The address led them to an exclusive neighborhood in New York, a mansion that rivaled the Jamesons. They were met at the gate by an older woman. "Are you here for Ms. Sinclair?" she asked. "Come in, she's expecting you." Arya and Ethan exchanged looks. "She's expecting us." In the living room, they met a woman in her 60s. Gray hair, noble features, and eyes. Arya gasped. She saw those brown eyes every morning in the mirror. "Hello, Arya, my darling," the woman said gently. "I am your grandmother on your mother's side." The world spun before Arya's eyes. Ethan caught her and helped her into an armchair. "But how?" Arya asked. "Mom said her parents had passed away a long time ago. Your mother and I had a falling out when she married your father, Marcus," Vivian explained sadly. "I was against it. Silly. Proud. I didn't think he was good enough for her. We didn't have contact for 20 years. And when I learned about the accident, it was too late. I tried to find you, but you had vanished off the face of the earth." "I was on the street," Arya said flatly. "For 3 years." The grandmother's face contorted with pain. "Forgive me. If I had known, I looked for you at Columbia, in dorms. I hired detectives. And then I saw the article about your foundation, your photo, and I knew that's my granddaughter. But I didn't know how to approach you. I was afraid you wouldn't forgive me." Arya stood up, walked to her grandmother, and took her hands. "Mom forgave you, I know it. She often thought of you, even if she didn't show it. And I'm happy that the children have another grandmother." They hugged and both wept. Ethan tactfully withdrew, giving them time. Vivian Sinclair organically integrated into the Jameson family, as if she had always been a part of it. The children loved the new great-grandmother, who spoiled them and told stories about their mother as a child. "Did you know your mom could recite Langston Hughes by heart when she was 5? Vivian told the grandchildren. "Just as smart as you two." It turned out that Arya's grandmother was a renowned literary scholar, a professor emeritus at Columbia. The circle closed in an astonishing way. The love for literature had been passed down through the generations. Vivian actively engaged in the foundation's work, taking over the education sector. Her contacts in academic circles helped organize scholarships for the shelter residents seeking higher education. "You know," she said once at a family dinner, "I lived my whole life for academia. I thought that was my calling. But only now do I understand that the true calling is helping others find their way." Keisha, who had graduated and was officially a foundation employee, added, "All of you changed my life, gave me the family I never had. Now it's my turn to pay it forward." Time flew by. Lisa turned 18 and enrolled in the English Literature department at Columbia. The family tradition continued. Marcus, at 16, was already publishing short stories in literary journals. Keisha married a young doctor who worked at one of the foundation's medical centers and was expecting her first child. The Bell Foundation grew into the largest charitable organization in the country. 15 shelters, 3 rehabilitation centers, educational programs, job placement, thousands of lives saved. A big gala was always held on the anniversary of the foundation's founding. This time, it was special, the 10-year anniversary. The grand hall was filled. Residents and alumni of the shelters, patrons, volunteers, journalists. The Jameson family stood on the stage in full force. Arya took the microphone. 10 years ago, my father-in-law, Arthur Jameson, did something crazy. He brought a homeless person from the train station into his home. Me. That single act didn't just change my life. It changed the lives of this whole family and sparked an idea. If one outstretched hand can change so much, what if there were more hands? She paused, looking out at the hall. where dozens of people, whose lives the foundation had changed, were sitting. Every one of you is proof that miracles exist, that love and faith are stronger than any circumstance, that a fall is not an end, but the beginning of a new path. Ethan stood next to his wife, leaning on his cane, elegant, with a silver-topped handle, a gift from his children. My wife says I gave her a home, but the truth is, she gave me life, taught me when to give up. She showed me that a disability is not a sentence, that you can fall and get up again, and fall and get up again because you have people by your side who support you. Arthur Jameson, graying but still energetic, added, I often think about that evening when I drove to Grand Central. What motivated me? Desperation? Madness? No, it was hope. Hope for a miracle. And it happened. Aria didn't just become a companion for my ailing son. She became the daughter I gained, the mother of my grandchildren, the founder of this foundation. But most of all, she brought love back into our home. Vivian Sinclair, sitting in the front row, wiped away tears. Next to her, Keisha with her husband, and her young son Ben in her arms. Lisa and Marcus stood behind the stage, preparing for their performance, a literary composition about the power of the word. And now, Aria continued, I want to introduce you to the people for whom we are all here, our alumni, who have proven that a second chance is not just a phrase. People of different ages and professions took the stage. A doctor who saved lives, a teacher who worked with troubled youth, programmer who developed an app to help the homeless, an artist whose paintings hung in galleries, a writer whose book about life on the streets became a bestseller. Each have briefly told their story of falling and rising, of the helping hand offered at the right moment, of the faith they found in the foundation. After the official part, there was a reception. Aria stood by the window, watching the people chat. Ethan came up from behind and hugged her. What are you thinking about? How amazingly everything worked out. Remember our first meeting? You asked where my father dug me up, and I answered Grand Central Terminal, and shocked everyone at the table. Ethan smiled. You know, I felt something even then. Your strength, your truth. You weren't playing a role. You weren't trying to please. You were just yourself. I couldn't be any other way. 3 years on the street wean you off pretense and teach you to value what's real. Real people, real feelings, real life. Lisa came up to them. Mom, Dad, there's a journalist from the literary magazine who wants to do an interview about our Healing Through the Word program. I'll be right there, Aria nodded. By the way, daughter, how's your seminar paper coming along? Are you still writing about symbolism in Trackle? I switched to a modern topic, Lisa smiled. Literature as a form of social therapy. The experience of the Bell Foundation. My advisor is thrilled. Her parents laughed. Their daughter was growing up not only beautiful and smart, but also compassionate. Just like Marcus, who at 16 was already leading a literature club at one of the shelters. The evening was winding down. The guests left, taking warmth and hope with them. The Jameson family remained in the empty hall. Grandpa, tell the fairy tale again, pleaded little Ben, Keisha's son, whom everyone considered a grandchild. Arthur Jameson settled the little one on his lap. It was on a cold winter evening. The snow was falling, like in a fairy tale. And I thought, what if there's a person out there somewhere who will change our lives? I just need to find them. The story already sounded like a legend, but everyone present knew it was true. Sometimes, all it takes is one crazy act, one outstretched hand, one encounter, to change everything. And if you think this story is over, you're wrong.
It continues every day, in every good deed, in every helping hand extended, in every life saved. Because good creates good. And love works true miracles. In Arya's study, a yellowed page from Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment hung framed. The very page she had been reading on that fateful evening at Grand Central. Written in the margin, scribbled with freezing fingers, were her notes. Man is always capable of rebirth. And that was the deepest meaning of her entire story. Rebirth. A new life. A fairy tale, perhaps, but a fairy tale that came true and is still coming true for thousands of people. When I look back on everything we lived through, I still feel that quiet, steady miracle that carried us from the darkest corners of a train station to a home filled with laughter. And if I can tell you one thing, it is this. No matter how lost you feel, life has a strange way of sending you the right people at the right moment. Do not turn away from the hand that reaches out to you, and do not hesitate to reach out yourself. Sometimes, the smallest act of courage becomes the beginning of someone's rebirth, including your own. If you feel the same way and enjoyed my story, show it by liking the video. Let's see how many we are. I'm curious, from which city and at what time are you listening to me right now? Write it in the comments. And if you want me to keep sharing these emotional, exciting stories every day, even a small donation makes a real difference. It truly helps keep this channel alive.
For more life stories like this, you can explore the other videos on my channel and subscribe. On the screen, you'll see 2 stories I'm sure you'll enjoy. Click one to start listening right away. Love to you.